Welcome to In Touch. I'm your host, Jean Heck. Oklahoma weather in the springtime can be unpredictable. And today, we'll be visiting with meteorologist Travis Meyer from Oklahoma's Channel 8. Travis will fill us in on the latest technology in forecasting weather. So sit back and enjoy today's show.
In Touch with Jean Heck, a public affairs presentation of TV 35, keeping you in touch with the issues and personalities of Claremore and Rogers County. And now, here's Jean Heck.
On such a beautiful Oklahoma spring day, it's appropriate that we have with us Travis Meyer. Travis, thanks for joining us.
Well, Jean, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Tell us first of all, how long have you been with Channel 8?
Okay, it's been about, we're going on 12 years now, and so it's been quite a long stretch. Originally I thought, well, maybe I'll just be here a little while, especially in TV, you never know, but it's been 12 years and love just about every minute of it.
Mm-hmm. And is your education in meteorology?
Yes, it is. I have a degree, a Bachelor's of Science degree from the University of Kansas, and that is in meteorology, and I also have one in geography and a minor in geology, because I wasn't quite sure. It was earth sciences someplace. I loved meteorology the whole time, but I didn't ever know if I was really wanting to be on TV. I always thought they were pansies, those meteorologists that are on TV, but yeah, here I am. I'm a pansy, I guess.
Well, you're originally from Nebraska, I understand.
That's right.
How did you end up in Oklahoma?
Well, it's one of those things my parents probably still don't understand. Growing up, I was taught to almost hate Oklahoma because I always beat Nebraska in football. I grew up on a farm in Nebraska, and I probably spent, and I'm not kidding, probably about 70% of the time praying for rain because it never would rain. And so our crops would always burn in the summer, and I would always be watching the weather and looking on the horizon, working in the fields, and kept thinking, you know, pretty soon it's going to rain one of these days. And eventually, through time, I started to understand the clouds a lot more, especially when I was young, and I wanted to pursue that a little bit more. So the best university that was close enough to Nebraska I'd still go home was at Kansas, in Lawrence, Kansas. So that's how it basically all began, but it started out just praying too much for rain. Now I'm praying keep severe weather from happening too often because I get tired after a while.
Yeah, I can imagine, I can imagine. Tell us, what's a typical day like for you, Travis?
Okay, usually I'll get up around 5:30 in the morning, and I do several different radio stations around eastern Oklahoma, western Arkansas. So I have to get on my computer, I have an office at home, and pretty much analyze what's going on. And of course, 4 out of the 5 nights I'm at work the previous night. So I have a pretty good idea of what's going to be happening. But take about a half hour on the computer and get all my stuff together, and then at that time I start making phone calls to the different radio stations. Usually then I try to get back to sleep for about an hour or so because my nights are quite short. I have a family, which of course puts a little kink in the plans because we're so limited on time together. And then I'll try to make it to some schools or public events whatever the situation is at that time. About 2 o'clock I'll roll into the TV station. If there's severe weather, obviously I have to be in a lot earlier. Then we prepare for the weather. We do about 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon is nothing but making graphics and looking at the new maps. And from 4 to 5 is making the forecast and touching up some of the graphics and the current temperatures and the latest satellite picture and things like that. Then we do our 5 o'clock newscast. At 5:30 then I go into work on the extended forecast. At 6 o'clock we have our next newscast. 6:30, usually I'll try to get out of the station for a little while if there isn't bad weather, from about 6:45 till about 8:30, 8:45. If I'm lucky, I might be able to pull an hour or two. Then it goes back to coming back here, updating the weather, getting new satellites, all that type of stuff. And then I usually get out of here by midnight to 12:30 because my office hours are usually after everybody leaves at 10:30. It's quiet finally, and I can spend time without the phone ringing and writing letters back and all that type of thing.
Boy, that sounds like a pretty rigorous schedule.
Yeah, it has been it's been stressful, especially as I said for family, just because my day is so chopped up. No one knows where to catch me or when to catch me because I'm in between the home as much as possible. We have a 1-year-old little girl and a 5-year-old, and my wife, when we had our baby this last year, I spent one day at home when she had the baby, and then it was back to work because of severe weather. So obviously that puts a little stress on family, and we try to get around that as best we can, but it's not easy.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of families today are facing with both
So
mom and dad at work too, having to fit into family time.
Yeah.
Okay, back to the weather, Travis.
Okay. All right.
Why is the weather in Oklahoma so difficult to predict?
Well, you know, we've had, there are times of the year when it's a little bit worse than others. And of course, the weatherman in Oklahoma usually catches a little bit more grief than, say, a person in the West Coast or on the East Coast. The reason in the West Coast, there it's much more of a modified climate, so you don't worry too much. East Coast, usually you see the storms that are developing here, and the East Coast meteorologists can pretty much say, oh, I see what's happening. Those poor guys out there. Here in the Midwest, where we find the Gulf moisture and we find the cold air from the north, it's kind of the same thing that happens, we talk about every year, where they collide. The problem is winter is tough in Oklahoma, especially around the Tulsa and northeast Oklahoma area, because we are on the boundary line between snow and rain. And then that usually makes people say, oh, those meteorologists, they have no clue as to what's going on. Most of the problem is the fact that when you're on the borderline, you have to call it both ways. So they think you're hedging, and yet you're really not. You're trying to give them an actual forecast. When it comes to for severe weather, we get tornadoes and thunderstorms like that. We are situated in the only place in the world that has this high of a frequency of severe weather, of tornadoes per square mile. So we definitely are, I would say about the average Oklahoman is much more aware of the weather than just about any other part of the country, minus, you know, northern states during winter or something like that, which are obviously more adept at that. But that's just the main cause right there, and it's rough because this is a volatile part of the country, and volatile just means changing rapidly. But that's what makes it fun too, because otherwise it would not be nearly the challenge that it is now.
Don't you have some new tools of the trade that help you forecast the weather here in Oklahoma?
My general manager sometimes says toys or tools of the trade. There's always something new, and of course, you know, Gene, as time goes on, the computers have changed everything. I started working, 12 years ago at Don Woods, and we were using little cutout cardboard things and then pasting them on a board and then having our studio crew shoot it about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. After that time, we had free time. There wasn't anything else to do. But in that time period, the last 12 years, we've probably, as you'll see in our weather office, we have just tons of keyboards and computers and new equipment. Every year something new is coming out, and that's of course thanks to the computer age. We're making things supposedly easier, but there's so much data and so many things. It's incredible.
Keeps you on your toes, huh?
Oh man, drives me crazy too, yeah.
I guess the first thing we're going to look at is your new Fast Track.
That's right. This is a pretty neat thing. What we call this, when we use it on TV, is called First Picks. And what this does is allows us to actually take pictures of a storm while it's occurring, while they're driving down the road at 50 miles an hour, which before we had to have what we call a live shot, which we had to stop the vehicle and then put up an antenna and make sure it was in direct line with our TV station, and then microwave the signal back, make sure the signal was okay before we could send a signal. Well, by that time the storm was 20, 30 miles down the road, and you just had the aftermath of it instead of what was actually happening. So I'm real excited about that, because that's one of our biggest things that we can finally kind of like slap somebody in the face and say, it's here, look at it, it's happening. This is within 40 seconds or so.
I think you've got a truck around back, and we're going to go take a look at one right now.
We are.
All
Okay,
right.
all right.
So Travis, what does Fast Track do for you?
Okay, one of the neatest things that we've come up with this past year is the fact that we're able to chase the storms, as I said, and we're able to take our units and go out into the field. Now, we have a total of 6 units, and 3 of those are equipped with what we call the First Picks. First Picks is real neat. I'll hop in here and give you an idea of how this works. As we have our storm chase teams, we train them first of all to make sure that they know what they're running into, so we don't send them right into a tornado or something like that. The thing about First Picks, I've taken this out, is that this little box is probably one of the neatest little boxes to come out. This was used during Desert Storm. It's Desert Storm technology, in fact, and all we do is just power it on, and it's hooked up to a cellular phone. Now, we have a bag phone here that we have just one that you can just carry in your hand, carries a battery with it, and really we could even go out in the field and just walk down into a farmer's field and take pictures of what's going on and send it back to the station. But what happens is when we see the storm and the storm chase units there, he's on a cellular phone to me anyway, and so what he ends up doing is taking his own cellular phone and saying, Travis, I see the storm now. And I direct him to the storm, tell him what's going on, and after I tell him what's going on, he tells me then what he sees. At that point, I say, okay, I need a first pics back right away. So what he then does is goes ahead, turns on the unit, and just to show you the simplicity of it all, is that we can take even as much as a little camcorder, such as this, and we use the, of course, obviously during newscasts and things like that, we use much nicer cameras, but this would even work, just a high 8 camera. And what he can do is hook this into his hand, and he can literally be looking through it and checking and taking a picture of a tornado. And he'll say, I have a tornado on the screen right now, and all he does is push one button. It automatically dials for us, and then when the connection is made, it'll take whatever picture is on this camera at that second, freeze it, and then send it across through the cellular phone. So that means we can be driving down the road 50 miles an hour, and he's getting a picture coming down. So about every 30 to 45 seconds, we get a new picture. It's not moving video because there's so much data in moving video, you cannot do that as of yet over phone lines. But we're at the state-of-the-art anyway so far, and this is the best they have, and this is still incredible, I do believe.
What does this technology mean to you back here at the station?
That allows me, you know, we talk about looking on a radar is one thing, but then after you look on a radar, then you go and you say, okay, is that really developing a circulation? Yeah, we can see it on Doppler. Is there a wall cloud there? Well, unless we have spotters in the area, we're just kind of estimating what we see on radar and trying to make an educated guess. But with this, all of a sudden I have a picture there, I can see what's going on, and from experience then the meteorologist in the office can actually get a better hands-on view, an idea, and can analyze the situation so much better.
So a wealth of weather information.
Plethora. Just
Okay.
a plethora.
That's great.
All
How
right.
much training do these guys have, Travis?
Well, the two guys that we have that we send out all the time, one of them used to be a hurricane hunter and flying hurricane hunter planes, so he's really into it. The other gentleman enjoyed meteorology so much that he grew up on a farm in central Oklahoma, and he follows through and chases the storms for us. Then we have stringers on the side, we call them. Those are guys who go out and chase storms professionally, and then we go ahead and you know, give them X amount of dollars per month or something like that for storm chasing. And then that allows us to keep some photographers and photojournalists in the building, of course, because we have newscasts as well, and they have to double up on duties that way. But the emphasis with the other four guys that are here at the station is we spend probably, I would say, about 10 to 15 hours of classroom per winter, and then we update that with an hour or two about every month, just to update them on what happened, if they made a mistake, and things like that.
So there's an incredible amount of education and preparation that goes into utilizing this system then.
Yes, it has to be, because we don't want to make one of those false movements where we send somebody out and then they run into a tornado and get hurt or something like that, because that's a danger that, well, it happens to anybody that has to go out and do news stories in general, but especially if you're going out and looking for a storm, and we want them safe, and we also want what they're saying to be actual truth, and not just like 100-mile-an-hour winds when really it's 50 or something like that. And we don't want to scare the public, and at the same time we want to make sure that they know what's going on.
So this is the latest, huh?
This is the latest right here, right now.
Okay, I think our next stop is to go inside to your weather center, and you got some tools and tricks you're going to show us in there.
That's right, we sure do. Let's go.
So Travis, this is your home away from home.
This certainly is. This is the home of Oklahoma's Channel 8. We have a real neat set that was built just in the last year and a half to 2 years, and it was developed in California, and we can do election coverage, newscast, Good Morning Oklahoma from this set. They can do interviews, almost anything. It's interchangeable, parts can be moved, platforms can be moved. It's real neat that way. It's multi-accessible, I guess we could say. Something that is probably real interesting for a lot of people at home is maybe they never even think about this, but when I do my weather, I'm standing in front of a map, all right, but I want you to watch this. As I walk in front of my map, look what's behind me. Nothing more than a green wall here. Now, we call this chroma key. And chroma key just means that anything is green is going to be keyed out into a weather map that I have. Now, when we take a look at the monitor on the side, you'll be able to see that, well, what I'm doing is really, I can point at things, but how do I know what I'm pointing at when I'm looking at a green wall? Well, I'm watching the TV sets that are off to the side of me. So I have one to my left and one to my right. So when I'm talking about a storm just north of Claremore, moving across Lake Oologah area, really what I'm doing is watching myself on TV. So I stand here, point at this green wall. People here in the studio think I'm nuts. But in actuality, it does serve a purpose because, as you can see, I can just about do anything I want here, and I can just pretend like we're moving into Pryor. And it takes a while to get used to that because your left and right hands are just the opposite as to what is usually affected by it. So that's what we call chroma key, and that's how I do my weather map.
Okay,
So
I've got a question on your weather, Travis.
Okay.
How do you do it all off the top of your head? You don't have any cues, nothing that you read?
Everything's ad lib. The only cue that I'd have would be basically my map, because that gives me something to fall back on. But weathermen are known for hot air. I didn't know if you knew that.
I'm impressed.
Okay.
I'm impressed.
So we go take a look at more in the studio?
Okay.
All right.
So Travis, this is where you do most of your work.
That's true. This is our First Alert Forecast Center, and as I was mentioning before, we have a tremendous amount of information technology changes that are occurring all the time. Here at Channel 8, we're allowed, I guess, to get a lot of this information and equipment as time goes on. This room, however small, is almost like where I live most of the time, besides obviously the studio. Some of the computer equipment we have, the first computer we have is for hearing impaired. It was brought to the attention of some people at Channel 8 that there are over 40,000 people in the greater Tulsa area that cannot hear. So based on that, they said, well, let's try to work on this. And of course, with computer systems, we've been able to get some of the hearing impaired viewers to be able to watch and to be able to see what's going on. So I spend time right before my weathercast typing in sentences that allow us to explain what the weather is, so they don't have to try to read lips when I'm turned facing the wall and the map and stuff like that.
Can you show us
and they
how
get
it
the same
works?
thing. Sure can. The computer system, as it's set up as such, allows us to go into the computer, and as we go into it, we can type in just about anything we want so that the viewer at home is able to see what is occurring. So I can go in and I can type up anything from today's forecast. We had a high temperature of 68. We were hoping for 70. Looks like a chance of storms tonight. Some of those could be severe after midnight. Tomorrow will be partly cloudy. There's a big storm system coming and stuff like that. So that allows me to kind of explain to them what's going on in a way that they'll be able to know, same as if I'm talking to people at home, but again, maybe not watching them. So that's real important.
It's a great public service as well.
Yes, it is, and it's something that I never thought of before, and I'm glad that someone at Channel 8 came up with that idea. The next computer system we have, it kind of shows up here. This is a satellite picture, and you can see today there's a lot of clouds. This is doesn't have state boundaries on it right now, but this map, for example, has a lot of clouds just to our north of Tulsa and northeastern Oklahoma sit in this area. So we're pretty close to having a really gross day, but we're on the sunny side of life right now, we could say. So that's good news. But these satellite pictures come across every half hour, and it helps us to figure out what's going to happen through the day and all. And this is a graphics tablet, and this is another important thing. It has an electric cord attached to it, and it has an electric pin, and every time I push down on it, that sends a signal through it. And as I draw with this pin, it will also draw, when set up properly, will draw on my map. So I'll be able to draw arrows and cold fronts and things like that. So what's, I would say, almost funny is the fact that I spend approximately, I'd say, close to an hour and a half just drawing computerized maps. I should probably have an art degree, really, for all the colors I have to use and coming up with different maps and designs. It's really amazing that way.
And Travis, do you use the satellite for your long-range forecasts? Like,
Usually, no. what we use is, it's a short range type of thing to help us determine where the clouds are, where the cold front is located, how big the storm really is compared to what the computer was projecting on our weather maps.
Okay, so the computer is for the long range then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we base some of what's going on with the satellite picture, especially if we see a big storm off the west coast. It looks like it's going to come through, bowl through the mountains and then hit the plains. Yes, that helps us determine something big is going on, especially over oceans where there's limited information. Then you have to rely, like, basically on satellite pictures. And satellite pictures now not only just tell you if there's clouds, they tell you the temperatures, the types of clouds, they tell you, of course, the movement of the clouds, and you can tell how much moisture there is in the atmosphere. They have what they call water vapor images. And even the satellite pictures can get so specific as they can locate areas where airplanes have crashed and stuff like that, and there's distress signals coming. So satellites, just like from the very beginning, have changed just as much with computers as well. Another thing that's of interest is we talked about our First Pix before. The First Pix unit is real neat in the sense that I'll switch over to it right now, and we can call up images as they come down. Something that works real well for us is that I'm sitting here, and as I told you before, I'm sitting in the office with the First Pix, and as I sit and wait for images to come down, we'll have a new one coming down here in just a minute. This is a picture of the Tulsa area when we were socked in with some fog, and you can see how fast that comes down. Now that comes down over cellular phone. The cellular service that we use helps to support us in getting this information to people.
Is that downtown Tulsa?
That's downtown Tulsa,
okay.
And that kind of gives you an idea of what it's like, and then it gives us a description of what unit is sending it in, because we have 3 different units that bring in information. So in that sense, sometimes you don't know which one's sending it to. You say, send me that picture, send it now, and by the time they send it, who sent that? And so we have labels that are labeled down for us.
When they send you back these fast unit pictures, are you actually right in here, Travis, or out there in the studio?
We're sitting here. Now, this does not look probably like this is the communication center of the world, but we have 6 telephone lines that we're using in here. We have 2-way communications, and we're also sitting here, and this is also the Doppler radar as well. So we can flip back and forth between whatever we want. And this is an example of a Doppler radar picture from the terrible tornado that occurred in Oologah and Skytook areas. And you see that's just north of Claremore as it was hitting the Oologah area. That little yellow area, little yellow dot in there is indicative of the tornado. So one of the things that we like about, obviously, Doppler radar, and we've talked about it before, and is the fact that Doppler radars can be real intense. You have to have a degree in meteorology really to understand what's going on, and even then there's so much data you can't consume it all. But we have a Doppler radar which makes it a lot easier. It simplifies it, so it shows where the turbulent area is, the movement of the clouds. And so it just concisely figures that into the picture. So when you're at home watching, oh, that yellow area, that must be a tornado or it's strong winds. And then we can tell you which one of the two. Otherwise, it's incredible how much information the Doppler radars have.
So people at home then only need to be concerned when you let them know.
Yeah, basically so. I always go by the belief, though, that you're your own best meteorologist, too. Keep one eye on the TV, on the meteorologist, and one eye on the sky. Because as much as I would love to say, perfect. I'm human, and everybody's human, and meteorologists have to be humble because there certainly are too many times that you can't cover every base. You've got all the equipment, but not always is it guaranteed that it's going to work out the way you would like it to. So from that standpoint, that's the only rough thing. One other thing that is of interest that has really helped us in the technology realm this past year or so is what we call the First Alert in the First Alert Forecast Center is the First Alert Storm Track, and this is something we put in the corner of the screen, and it's called First Alert. Now what happens is, okay, we have a picture there of a 4-state, well really 5-state area. I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to a different picture right now, and that's what you're going to see in the bottom corner of your screen when you're looking at TV. Now some people don't like that. Because it's interfering with their TV programming. But really, there is no faster way. Before, what we had to do was we had to literally take our time and find out what the warning was, because the National Weather Service, we usually go through official source like the National Weather Service. We'd get that, then we'd have to take that piece of paper, go upstairs, plot it on a little tiny map, and then that map would have to be projected on TV. Then we'd have to go into another room, hand it to another operator who would type it in for us, type the warning in. Well, we'd have anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes expire in that period of time before we actually got the warning on. Now, before the warning comes across, before I even have a chance to read it coming across, it's already on the air. And it's amazing what it's. Again, the computer is doing it for our lifestyle in terms of speeding the process up, which, you know, a minute can make all the difference in the world if you're just flipping on TV wanting to know what's going on.
Okay, Travis, you've done a great job of showing us this technology. Where can we actually see what the storm looks like?
Well, I'll tell you what, I have some videos that I'd like to share with you, maybe a few safety tips. You want to go up and take a look at some of those in one of our rooms?
Sure, love
All right,
to.
let's go do it.
Okay, Travis, what are we seeing here?
Okay, this is a tornado. This is the devastating tornado of Andover, Kansas, back from April of 1991. What we're looking at here is probably some of the most unique video that I have seen. And look at the rotation around the tornado. Tornadoes are very common to Oklahoma and Kansas, and obviously this was way too common for the folks in Andover. Wind speeds with this one were over 200 miles per hour. Average tornado, you know, they'd go through Tulsa, Claremore areas, maybe 100 to 150, but this was a mammoth. That happens maybe 2% of the time.
How are they scaled? These?
They're scaled. We have a scale called F0 through F5. It's a Fujita scale. That helps the meteorologists figure out what's going on in terms of the size of it. And we have some of our storm teams report back, and this looks like an F2 or an F3, and we have certain winds that are associated with that wind speed. But you can see here, as we're looking at the video, you can see debris coming out. You can see the rotation very strong. You can see what we call condensation of some of the clouds around there, and see the debris, the little particles off on the left side of the monitor. Imagine waking up with that behind you in your home there, and looking out the window and saying,
Pretty
my gosh,
terrifying.
it really would be.
Okay, Travis, we have a little time, and I'd like if you could review some of the tips that people should keep in mind.
All right, tip number one, you know, there is a chance that we can say cry wolf a little bit too much, but yet heed it, be aware that there is a potential for severe weather. A lot of people blow it off. A lot of people call me, say, what are you always on TV for? And I'm afraid that a lot of people think that just because we have so much weather information, we keep promoting the fact that we do, that they're going to start saying, well, you know, big deal. Always take it as somewhat of a big deal. That doesn't mean be afraid, but be aware. Number two, if there is a tornado approaching your direction, your county, make sure that you get your family into the center part of your home, lowest floor, in the middle of the home, underneath a staircase, underneath a heavy table if possible. Bathrooms are great as long as they're not by windows on the outside of the building. Those are the key ingredients. Number three, if you're at a church, in a large building of that sort, make sure you're not over an open span, or under an open span roof that is like a gymnasium type of building. Those collapse right away. Number four, you definitely want to make sure that you don't drive and try to outrun a tornado. Our storm chase guys know, you know, what to do if they're face to face with a tornado, but many times we would tell them to get in a ditch or a ravine as soon as possible. Don't try to outrun them. So many people are killed in their automobiles. Number five, keep away from windows, just in any building, wherever you're at. Those are things that you have to learn, that you just have to react to immediately. And there shouldn't be a fear mechanism as much as just an automatic thing like getting in your car, putting on a safety belt. So many people less are killed by tornadoes than they are by people in automobiles. But yet at the same time, the tornado just breeds so much nasty thought. Lightning kills more people than tornadoes. Flooding kills more people than tornadoes. And those are other aspects that we didn't cover, but you just have to be careful about.
Would you recommend that families then practice these drills at home?
Yes, practice and have a place that you know that you're going to go to, and just practice a couple of times so that the kids, they're not afraid of it and afraid it's a dragon. Yes.
Well, Travis, I want to thank you for being a guest on In Touch. You've done a super job of giving us the latest tips and technology on Oklahoma weather, and we hope we don't have a bad tornado season.
Amen on that. Thank you, Gene.
And thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week on In Touch.